Yeah.
All right. Today, and it's kind of interesting because yesterday, even at the 3 o'clock, we had a little bit of conversation on the objections and resolutions and waivers. And I always like to start off with those because to me, you know, when we get that sale side, whether you're on the purchase side or you're on the listing side, everything's going really great. Everybody's all happy. They're buying a new house. We're selling our old house. And when it comes down to the ORW, then the romance begins to fade away. That's always a fun one because truth be said, sometimes it feels like you're totally renegotiating your contract. Because when you get over there with that inspector, things aren't always so rosy as they are. But I wanted to pick up a few things. Let's see if I can get to my share screen so we can talk a little bit about this. Let me get to this. And I'm going to start off actually with this part, okay? Because you guys all remember that, right? And the reason that I like to start with that, I'll put you over here, is because this is really where it all starts about your inspections, even before you are going to get an inspector out there. Because item F on your purchase agreement basically starts with inspection deadlines. And if you recall that very first one, the only time that you would have a date or anything in there, if there was an inspection hypothetically that, let's say that you were willing to accept that the buyer had, that's the time you would ask them to deliver it from the buyer. Most crucial though, is the second one, objection deadline. And this, in this purchase agreement that we did originally in our class, we said that the objection deadline, buyer's objection to be delivered to seller no later than 15 days of acceptance. Resolution, parties to reach resolution no later than 18 days. And those numbers can change, okay? And as I told you guys before, one of the things that you have to remember is that inspectors are very, very busy, and sometimes they're not always easy to get a hold of, right? So keep that in mind when you're going through it. But yesterday there were some questions about, well, when do I get these things resolved? Well, that resolution date should be there. In other words, if you're asking them to do some repairs and so forth, those are those times you're going to do it. And probably the most critical thing that I always tell people about when they're doing just the purchase side of it, and you can be the seller on the other side because you've got to sit there and say, yeah, I accept these deadlines, but you don't want to move those, you don't want to miss deadlines. Most crucially is during the inspection time. And you got to ride herd. You've got to make sure that those things are going to happen, because if you do not, all of a sudden you now could be in a situation that, you know, you can miss those deadlines, and all of a sudden you're out of contract. Or if you want to keep it in contract, a lot of times you get a hard-nosed seller. They say, well, you missed them. If you want to buy this house, you're going to take it without those inspections. Okay. So let's see what else we've got here. So let's go here. All right, guys. Here's what it looks like. If you haven't seen it, oops, that's actually not what I want. That's what we want. There we go. So we're going to start off just as we have every time. This is just a sample. I can send you guys a sample if you need it of what it looks like. Objection resolution and waiver notice. And of course, we got our famous Tom Jones and Diana Ross again. They're buying that property over in Caius Sebastian. There is the lot legal description. Keep in mind, none of these are correct. They're just for a sample. And it says here, the notice and agreement is subject to all existing deadlines. Big word there. Big word there. In the purchase agreement, dated April 15th. And here's the definition. It's very, very important that you read these ahead of time. You can waive it. Waiver means the buyer requests inspection and the documents, and the buyer now waives his right to have the following requested conducted in his place. Maybe you thought, well, maybe I do need a radon, and then you guys talk about it a little bit, go, no, I don't really want to do that. Or if even you do it, but there's nothing harmful in that report, then you may want to waive it, that you don't have to identify anything with that particular inspection. Satisfied and satisfaction, buyer has had the following inspections conducted and or has reviewed the following documents provided by the purchase agreement, if the buyer was going to send you stuff. And then C, the most important, objection, buyer objects to the following items on the inspection report or the survey, ILR, or documents are requested to cure said objections are set forth in 3. So the first thing you're going to be doing here is you're going to be identifying the kind of inspections that you did. And again, these are just fake names. The Best Home Inspections Company, and they're the ones that's going to do the general inspection for you. And you might even have a well on it. So we had the Deep Well Inspections Incorporated. We had the Creepy Bugs Inspection Company come out. And we also had the Flat Roof Inspectors come out. And you can see I purposely did it that we have objections from the Best Home Inspector. We have objections from the Deep Well. Well, the Creepy Bug Inspector went out there and he didn't find any bugs. So, hey, you know what? We waived that now. We're not going to worry about it. And we had inspections on the Flat Roof Inspectors. All right. So sure enough, your buyers, of course, would be signing right here. All right. Maybe you have 2 of them. They're signing. When you get it back, you should have your initials from the seller. But this is where it gets to be really fun. Okay. We'll see if I can do this. It's always hard to see. You know, that thing gets up on top. Hang on a second, guys. See if I can get rid of some of this stuff. I always have a hard time because that thing, that toolbar always blocks me. Ted, is there a way I can see underneath your sharing, or do I have to stop the share? Oh, well. Let's see if I can do it. Bear with me, guys. I'm going to stop the share for a second. I'm going to go back here. There it is. This is what I'm looking for, my sample report. All right. All right, here we go. So lo and behold, you hired out your inspector. And this is just a report that I've done years ago on a client of mine. And here's the, you know, picture of, I'll always have a nice picture of the house and so forth. That's the name of the company that did it. I redacted out all the information, and I'll explain that to you guys in a little bit. But here was kind of the scope of the inspection. And you know, Ray and I were talking about the kind of inspectors, God, you just love to have are the ones that create a summary for you. So you have an idea right off the bat, some of the problems of property. And you can see this one, you know, they did some mechanical work. They've done it. They even kind of identified the property. It goes on and on and on. But here's some of the nice things that they did on that summary, you know, that most part, if the stucco walls are in good condition, the interior wall, good condition, dining room. You can see some stuff in windows were fair condition. This is just a basic inspection. This is that general inspection that you're going after. The key to keep in mind is that when you are the buyer and you have the buyer as a guy who's going to go out and spend the money on this inspection report, you also have to communicate to your buyer to some degree. You're not trying to sway them, but you have to tell them to be a little realistic sometimes, because they're probably buying a resale. And there are things that, you know, depending on how nitpicky they are, but you also have to remember sometimes an inspection can really, you know, it can blow a deal. So I always try to communicate to my buyers and say, look, guys, we are going to get this thing inspected, of course. We want to make sure that the house is safe, that it is meeting relatively code, and understand code is based at the time that house was built. So a lot of times when new code comes into play, it's already past tense. Santa Fe is classic for that, right? We've got homes that were built 100 years ago here. And sometimes you get a buyer who comes from out of state, and the inspector says, well, the electrical system here, it doesn't meet code anymore. Yeah, that's because that house only had 2 wires coming in 100 years ago. And so, those are issues that even when you're out showing property to your clients, you have to bring them into the, kind of the 21st century reality of saying, I get it. These great old historic homes up here on Canyon Road or Upper Canyon, a lot of times they're not going to meet all the codes that you want. So keep that in mind, that you probably are buying yourself, as I say, my new TV show, Santa Fe $1 Million Fixer Upper, because, a lot of times that's what we're dealing with. So you'll keep going through these things, and you'll see this as the buyer. More than likely, the buyer will share this with you. They're going to look at you and they're going to go, Cynthia, what do you think we need to get fixed? Or, Claudia, look at the roof. Oh my God. What are canales? We don't even know what canales are. And I say that kind of in just because a lot of people who come into Santa Fe, they don't know what adobe is. They see stuccoed walls and it must be an adobe house. No, it's a framed house done by 2x6s, but the coating is stucco. It's not an adobe house. Or flip it around. Wow, this house is truly adobe, and all the electrical and everything's up on the roof. How come everything's up on the roof? Well, if you've been in adobe, and believe me, I live in one, when you're starting to do renovations, you're cutting dirt to try to make things work. So those are just things, as you get more and more experience, and some of the more experienced brokers know this, that you're dealing with a lot of that. So we're going to kind of zip through it real quick. You can just see suggested improvement. This is kind of those nice things. If you get a good summary, they'll tell you all the things that are going on with this particular house. The other thing you have to keep in mind, guys, is I'm going to move down to pictures. Here we go. We all love pictures, right? Is that the new requirement of sending off a inspection report to the seller is you can't send the entire inspection report to them. We used to do that, and it was pretty convenient. It was nice. Okay, these are the only things I'm really concerned with. We've got some roof problems, but the rest of the stuff we can live with. But we used to like to use that as somewhat of a leverage tool. Your ORW could have been worse. All we want is for you to take care of some of the roof issues, and the rest of it doesn't matter to us. You can no longer do that. If you have issues with the roof, then you've got to be able to do some cut or paste or redaction, whatever turns you on. I use Acrobat. I think I was telling that to someone earlier. And I love Acrobat because Acrobat will allow me to redact. And that's Acrobat. And I'll show you guys a link to get it. I spend $14 a month for it, but it makes my life a lot quicker because I can go in here and I can just highlight this area here. It blacks out. I can apply it. It's going to save it to my website, whatever, or to my file as a redacted form. So if you're interested more in that, give me a call. I'll show you guys how to use it. All right. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to say we have decided everything that, we decided that we wanted to object to issues. So back to our objection report. There we go, buyer's objections. And this is what we outlined just for sake of conversation. The buyer requests cures. The buyer requests the following cures to the objections set forth per the purchase agreement. And it could be anything, even a survey, an ILR. This is the place that you do it. Okay, sometimes we're not getting that ILR to the very, very end of the objection period. Okay, so you may want to state ILR is forthcoming, and you reserve the right to come back as an objection. There's a couple ways of doing it, but for sake of expediency today with this class, we're going to talk about just those issues. So the seller to replace or repair by a licensed electrical professional the following items. We got into this conversation yesterday of, be careful, because a lot of times if you are the seller, well, it turns out that Billy Bob, their brother-in-law, he's a handyman. He says, I can fix all that stuff. Well, if you're the buyer, you're going to want to point out that you want this stuff done by a licensed professional. And in this case, there were a number of items, and it's very common. The GFI receptacles near the kitchen, master and guest rooms near the sinks, that's electrical. The ceiling fan in the master bedroom wasn't working. We don't know why. We're flipping the switch, it wasn't working. The exterior plug receptacles out on the patio were not working. The exterior wall sconce on the patio was not working, same circuit. The garage door opener wall switch in the garage was not working. And I even made a little notation, may require a professional garage door expert to resolve it. And then lastly, the electrical box does not meet safety code near the well and needs full replacement. Well, hypothetically, this house was built back in 1963. One could argue the facts as well. At the time, those two little wires did. But once it becomes somewhat of a safety issue, I kind of push back a little bit. That's just me, of saying, I get it that in 1963, but guess what? You only had, 12-ply Romex and it needed, 8, whatever it may be. That's not for me to make that decision. That's for my experience. But at the same time, your inspector will more than likely identify that, it doesn't meet code. So I break it down all the time. You can see up here, I just said, this is the best home part of it. Then I came back down here and I said, deep well inspection. That's the next one. So then I said, the seller to have well pump replaced by a licensed plumber, well special or electrical professional, since inspection report says the pump is reaching the age for replacement. Okay. The buyer has provided an estimate cost for replacement and attach it to the document. Help them out. If you've already got a bid on it, do it. It gives you also some leverage if they choose to come back and say, well, we're going to cure it by giving you money. Go ahead, says, if the well inspector is out there anyway, well, give me an estimate. What do you think it's going to cost? Keep in mind all the time in any of these ORWs, the seller could say no. But you being the good professional and you talking to your seller, to your buyer, what you think they will or will not do, you can always ask. Doesn't mean they're going to give it to you. Second part, seller to replace or repair by licensed electrical contractor, the box near to meet safety code as outlined in the best home inspection and deep well inspection. So maybe both reports said it. Hey man, that thing is way out of code. Those two little wires are barely hanging in there. They've got a little piece of electrical tape in there. And, I wouldn't even do the switch because I'm fearful I'm going to get electrocuted, okay? And 9 times out of 10, sellers know it, but they're going, we want to sell the property as is. No such thing. I say that to you guys all the time. They can say they want to sell it all day long as is, but the buyer has the right to do inspections. So remember that when somebody's giving you the pushback and saying, you know what, doesn't matter, they're going to sell it as is. Well, that's fine. They're going to sell it as is. If that's what they want to do, they can always reject our objections. But we also have the right as buyer to go in there and check it out. Because if we don't think this is going to cut it, we're out of the deal. Okay, the next one was the Flat Roof Inspector, LLC. This is one that's beginning to really kind of shake me up a little bit, but I went ahead and put it in there. Seller to have the entire roof replaced by a bonded licensed roofer. Roof is now over 20 years old and has pumice as base insulation and shaping material. This no longer meets code and must be removed upon repair and installation of a new roof. Andy Alt brought this to my attention, I don't know, maybe a year and a half ago. And in the 70s and early 80s, what they were using was pumice. There's Andy now, I'm bragging about you, Andy. They were using pumice to kind of shape the roofs as well as an insulation. And it was okay then, all right? And it's still okay if there's nothing wrong with it, going back to that's when it was there. The catch to that, though, is if there's any kind of breakdown, any kind of leak, guess what happens to that pumice? It soaks up like a sponge. And pumice basically is volcanic ash, rock. And after a period of time, if you get that much moisture in a break, that pumice turns into like cement. What do you think it's doing on those beautiful vigas above your head, Lexa? You know, it's putting weight on that sucker. The second part to that is the concern that that pumice, that water is in there and it's captured between whatever the roofing material was and those vigas, potential mold. So those are those things that are very, very important. And you'll hear a roofer say, well, we got to core the roof. What they're doing is they're taking a core sample, maybe 3 to 4 inch cut in there to see what the material is below it. Okay. Doesn't mean that the roof may need to be repaired or not. I tell people all the time, full disclosure with my house up in the Upper Canyon area, built in the late 70s, early 80s. It has a pumice roof. Well, when I bought the house, first thing I did is I went and bought what they call BAC roofing. It's rubberized, and redid my roof. This is long before I even knew about pumice. It's got a guarantee that no water will break that. And I told my daughter, well, I have no intention of ever replacing my roof because I spent $35,000 on this top of the line roof line. And if it ever craps out, you can have the house and I'm done. Good luck. You repair it. You get rid of the pumice. All right. Same thing is if you got an estimate, great. You can see I also put this just for kicks. Seller to replace canellis by licensed roofers, which is begin to rot through the roof, throughout the roof top. And that happens a lot. Those canellis are, they're wood. So you get wood rot on some of that. Okay. But lastly, I put in here all receipts, warranties, work orders to be provided prior walkthrough date. I think Robert was asking that yesterday. So at the very least, you want to have all those receipts and any kind of warranties they provide you, any kind of work orders that maybe the seller was going to get prior walkthrough date at the very, very last. I mean, in reality, they should be giving that stuff to you as they go along, because be practical with all of these items that you have here that you're asking them to repair. There's no way that they're going to repair it within that 3-day period of time for resolution. All that's telling you when you look at that purchase agreement is they're going to respond back to you by that period of time and saying, this is what we're going to do. Okay. So prior to us, before we go into the seller's response, anybody have any questions in reference to the actual buyer's objections? Wow, we're smart. I love it. You got one, Cynthia?
Yes, I do. It really goes back to the purchase agreement and the provision with regards to the timelines, right?
Right.
I'm getting back in the business and resell. So what is realistic? Because I know inspectors out there, they're jammed up with their workload. What are we seeing now that's realistic for those dates?
You know, what I would do in the past, and there's a few other senior brokers, and maybe they'll chime in as well, is a lot of times I will call them ahead of time. I've got tremendous inspectors that I work with. Robert with Zazo, and I've also worked with Randy Moya and so forth. And a lot of times, as I am preparing the purchase agreement, I'll call them. Doesn't guarantee that they're going to be selected, but I'll call Randy and say, Randy, how far out are you? And Randy says, man, I can't touch anything for 3 weeks. That will help me prepare my purchase agreement. Mm-hmm. Okay. And I said, Randy, I don't know if you're going to be selected, but in the event that you are, if you have a cancellation, will you call me? And even if my my buyer chooses to do a purchase agreement, 2 weeks, whatever it is, and they select ABC inspection because they've had them in the past, I mean, almost immediately after the purchase agreement has been signed off, I'm calling that inspector and says, man, they've selected, they want to use you. How quick can you get in there? But I think right now, unless some of you guys have done something most recently, they're probably 2 to 3 weeks out. Sandy, you've just done a few deals. How far out are they?
I've done about 2 weeks.
Okay.
Usually works.
Okay. So there you go. I mean, so like I said, even before we get to the objections, we're already dealing with that timeline. And, I think one of the classes coming up again is the calendar. But where most newer brokers, and not just newer, I see some of my senior brokers doing the same thing, is they get too short with their time. And then they're scrambling. And then, of course, then you're having to write an amendment. You're having to say, hey, I need to extend my inspection period of time, which is okay to do, because you're talking to that other selling broker and so forth. And right now, it is really, really crucial to do as clean a contract as you can, because there's just so little inventory that, people are going, no, I'm going to waive my inspections. So we're seeing people. Yeah, who's there?
I just want to chime in a little bit.
Please,
what I've seen with some of the newer brokers as well is that they actually, if they're not doing too short of a time period, they're doing too long. They're saying 21 days, 30 days for inspections. And because we are in such a tight market, I've just tried to explain to them that some sellers are not going to want to pull their house off the market without a TOM fee for that period of time, waiting for you to complete the inspection. So finding that middle ground is really important. So I just kind of wanted to add that too, that yes, don't make sure you give yourself enough time, but not too much time.
Cool. Good. Pam.
Hey, since we're talking about this, it's a little off topic, but how do you guys work that out? Because you went from talking to the inspector. So my question is, even though the seller pays for, say, the termite septic, the buyer still picks, which it gets lost in translation at that point, who orders it? So I tell my brokers, it's nice if you two brokers have a communication. Do you want to pick somebody or the seller? So what is your stance on that?
I'm still pushing everybody that the buyer makes that decision. You provide them the resources of who inspectors are that you want, because we really don't want to get stuck with saying, well, Tom said I should use this guy. And then the next thing you know, you got a lawsuit down the road and Tom said. So we still push that direction. However, that doesn't mean that if you have inspectors that you do recommend off, maybe in those 3, call them and say, how far out down the road are you? So when you are communicating to your broker, to your buyer, and saying, I will tell you, these guys are out for 2 weeks, can't do it. Paula makes very good point, though, that deals are blown because it's too far out, and all of a sudden now we're trying to crush, because really there are so many other brokers out there who say waive the inspection. I think that's dangerous.
Oh, me too. So when a seller's paying, does the other broker call you guys up and give you that and say, hey, who do you guys want? The seller's going to call and schedule this because they're paying for it. And a lot of times it's easier if it's a septic and stuff for them to set it up. Or does your buyer assume responsibility for arranging all the inspections?
Well, in terms of everything except the septic. But most of the time.
And the termite and whatever else the seller's paying for. So I don't like your answer, Tom. It's too great. I want a black and white answer. I want the buyer's going to order them all. They call the seller, they call the buyer and say, tell me who and when, because we don't have enough communication between our brokers. So then it gets down the road that, you know, the buyer, the one representing the buyers, gets that home inspection scheduled, you know, but back here sitting the septic and the termite, because it says the seller, even though it says the buyer can pick, it does not say the buyer is going to order. So it's gray area. And if you don't have a lot of communication between your two brokers, I've had inspections miss the deadline because nobody ordered.
Yeah, no, you're right, Pam. I mean, that is, you know, that's that whole level of transparency of working with whoever you are. You just, you know, don't send the purchase agreement over and think it's over. And all of the thing that most brokers make the mistake is that they're not willing to open up that line of communication. And almost every issue that I've dealt with, and I'm sure you as well, it's because, well, they didn't talk to me and I didn't talk to them, and now we didn't get this thing done. And then you're doing amendments and all that other stuff.
Yeah, and we're not parties to the contract, and we just kind of screwed up their contract. And Pam Sawyer may still have she might have got her question answered, but Pam, I'm done beating that dead horse if you're ready.
All right, go ahead, Pam. I guess she didn't.
Okay.
All right, let's go back to the share screen again here and just take a look at, let's see, we'll do this again. All right, so you send it off to the seller's broker. They sit down with their seller. Of course, you have all your signatures and so forth. And there's a number of ways they can cure it, okay? The first one is the seller response to the buyer's request. They can say, you know what? You're absolutely right. We're going to fix everything in this house. That would be sweet. That would be sweet. Of course, if they say that, you certainly want to make sure that you're getting all your receipts and any kind of work orders or anything that can be done. All right. And they're going to get it done by the time of closing. Or the seller agrees to cure only the following. So using this as example, they may say, you know what? Forget the roof. We're not going to do the roof. You're buying this house as is with the roof, but we'll go ahead and fix all the electrical. And within that area, that's where they would state on this page what they will or will not fix, okay? Then here's the other one. Seller agrees to the following. We're seeing a lot of this. To reduce the purchase price of the property as set forth in an amendment to purchase agreement 2101. And I'll show you a copy of that in a minute. Or to credit funds to the buyer at closing. Okay, and again, 2101. Keep in mind, there's only so much can be credited. If you've got yourself all these issues, a roof and electrical, guarantee it's going to be more than $5,000, $10,000. Closing costs aren't going to be there. That's that conversation that you have with your title person. Say, well, they want to credit us. Well, great. And if you're on the seller side, yeah, we want to credit some. And I've seen it go both ways, that both of these have been checked, that they're going to credit some and do a price reduction on another one. But keep in mind, how much can they credit? They can certainly say, we're going to reduce the price by XYZ. Let's see if I can find it.
They can reduce the price like that, Tom, but you guys aren't in Farmington, you guys are in that second home market. But right. What we come across is that takes the money in order to repair the property and gives them a $5 less mortgage payment by lowering the price. And right. I don't know if you do this, but we've gotten pretty good, and our lenders and our title company both accept it. If we have an actual invoice for, say, a roofing company that is going to replace the roof, that they'll pay that on the HUD, and then the title company will hold the check until the work's finished. So there are some things. So stay in touch with Tom if you get where that credit thing's not allowed, because the lender can only credit so much. Right. Here we already have them paying closing costs. So then when they want to credit at closing, we're going, yeah, there's nowhere to put it. So we've had to jump through that hoop quite a bit. Yeah,
I've had to jump through that hoop too, Pam. Because all of a sudden they're going, yeah, we'll go ahead and credit you. Well, wait a minute. There's not enough money on the table.
No, one fraud.
So here's what that amendment looks like, guys. Okay, 2101, is that what it is? The amendment is part of the residential. Again, there's that purchase date was the 4/15. There's our friend Tom Jones, who's the buyer, and Diana Ross, who's the seller, location. And this is the easiest one, price modification. Buyer and seller agreed to amend the purchase price of the property to $695. And hypothetically, let's just say that the house originally was $725,000. So they're taking into account, well, we don't want to fix the roof. We don't want to take care of the electrical. We will just go ahead and reduce the price. That's the easiest and the smoothest and the nicest one that we could all hope that we get. They're never quite that smooth, but sometimes they are. Or here's that same thing Pam and I were just talking about, the credit. But, if you start seeing credit that, the closing price is going to be, $2,500 and they want to credit back $5,000, it's not going to happen. And you're going to have to work with your, hang on, let me get the door, guys. You're going to have to work with your title people to do that. Okay. The other thing, and we haven't seen a lot of this yet, but it's coming, is the new title commitment revision fees. In the past, you got a good title closer, they don't charge, they change and so forth, but now they have the right to do so. I don't think they have, at least here in Santa Fe, it hasn't gotten to that point yet. I know, Pam, you guys only have that one person up there, so, you may see it before we do, fees charged for any kind of revisions. So the default for me at this point in the Santa Fe market is the party shall split equally if there is a revision fee. But we may see more and more of that, and title companies may start fighting. We're a little bit more competitive. Unfortunately, Pam, like she only has that one title people up there, they kind of can decide how it's going to play out or not. Okay. So kind of in a nutshell, guys, that's what you would do. Utilize that form. There it is, whatever the number was. I can't remember off the top of my head. But truth be said is these, and the most important one to remember on this, when they're saying seller sells as is, the seller declines to cure any of the buyer's objections as requested. They can do it.
Hey, Tom, can I add one thing?
Please.
Just as a reminder to some of the newer brokers that the ORW is not part of the purchase agreement. And I've seen brokers that are using that, and as part of the cures, they'll check that box that says that they're going to reduce the purchase price. And then they actually, the next page, yes, seller agrees to reduce the purchase price and signs off. And that's what they're submitting. There's never an amendment that's created. And so just as a reminder that it is a requirement, especially for compliance or down the road, if you'd ever have to pull that purchase agreement, you need that amendment. You can't make that, the ORW is not sufficient to state what the credits are or what the reduction in the purchase price is.
Right. That used to be an amendment, labeled an amendment. So you almost had to give it to the lender because lenders really don't want to see this. This ORW is a standalone form.
Right.
Do not give it to the lender. And when you do that price reduction, that's what you send them. You're amending the purchase agreement to reflect your new price. And this ORW is none of their business.
Yeah, precisely. Thank you both for that. So remember that if you get that price reduction, guys, this is the form that you're going to be sending your title people as well with the new amount. Okay. And end of the thing, whatever it is, buyer accepts the provision or, rejects it, whatever it may be, withdraws, whatever. So just take a look, guys, at number one. I always tell you guys to always look ahead of time. Don't wait until you have one of these sitting in front of your nose and, it's Saturday night and it's, 7:30 at night or 8 o'clock. And well, let's call Tom or let's call Paula. What do we do with it? And nobody picks up and you've got to have a response by the next day. And then you're going, oh man, I got to go to one of those boring videos that Tom has on his website to see what he said. And I'm just saying, again, always be prepared. Worst place it is. And I've got some new brokers coming in, and I don't know if they're on this call. Let me see, just for the heck of it. No, I've got some new brokers that are coming in, and they've already are ready to write a purchase agreement because they're telling their friends, hey, I'm a broker now. And guess what? Brokers saying, great, we want to buy this house. Let's do it. And they haven't even got on to the MLS or know how to get into DocuSign or knows how to get into Instanet on SFAR, or God forbid, they have even got into Dotloop, and they're ready to do it. And it puts a lot of pressure on myself as well as Paula a lot of times, because of course we don't want to lose the deal, but at the same time, how prepared are you on this stuff? Okay. All right.
I have to thank Tom for these deals and his water cooler. There's not a day that, maybe a couple days, Tom, I didn't give you that much credit, but once in a while I don't learn anything. But even as long as Tom and I have been in the business, we can bounce off one another and do a clarification and stuff. And I got to say, I appreciate you letting me bombard your party here and your support.
I love it. No, I love it. And you know, it's the same deal that I've told many of you, whether it's working with Pam or working with Paula. You know, I don't have infamous knowledge on everything. You know, things you learn. And as you grow as a more seasoned broker, 9 times out of 10, when I'm talking to another seasoned broker, it isn't me dictating to them what needs to be there, unless it's something I go, no, you can't do that. There are those times. But most of the time, it's you're learning as broker to broker. I'm thinking about doing this. What do you think? It's no different than Pam and I having debate on it. Well, this is what we do in Farmington. I hate the way you guys do it in Santa Fe, blah, blah. We go back and forth with each other. And it's certainly poor Paula. I drag her in on these things, not only a lot of times just on these kind of Zoom calls, but on occasion I'll go scratch my head and go, let me run this by Paula, see what she says. Because she certainly has the upper hand of understanding compliance for all the years she did it. And of course, now that we're centralized, she's not in that role any longer. And we're always a little fearful, because sometimes as time goes on, we get less and less and less sharp on our skills for compliance, and we're having to rely on other people.
It never hurts to bounce it off of somebody. And I told Barry, I'm going to bounce something off of you. I was going to do it 3 o'clock, but we might as well do it now. He's got a property, and back in the olden days, when they closed down one of the mines here, they moved a lot of the houses that were on site to a new location. Is that site built?
I don't think they are considered site built once they've been lifted, Pam.
Yeah, I think there's an option, and that's what I told Barry. I think he's on here.
Yeah.
I said, I think there's a box called offsite. It's still a brick, a frame and everything at home, but it was not built on that site.
I know that way back. This goes, now I'm showing my vintage years of Los Alamos. There were homes that were built there. They were the Denver Steels, and they were site built. Well, yes and no, because when they came and built those things right after the war, and you might even remember some of those, Barry, living in this area, is that they literally brought these giant kits, and that's why they called them the Denver Steels, because they were just these giant kits. They literally brought all the parts together, if you will. They were kind of metal buildings. They had the foundations on, and boom, they would, put down, even those days, a 2x4 stud, and then go up with these metal buildings, okay? As time went on, just because of the cost of property in there, my old broker that I used to work with, his family were in the moving business, and they would bring in these trucks and literally just move them right on top of the trucks and move it to a different location. So that's a good question. Might be a good one to ask Ashley to see if they are really considered site built, because now they're being relocated elsewhere.
Right. And you just don't want that coming up later that it was,
right.
Wait a minute, that house was hauled in here and Barry said it was site built, and there you go.
Pam said it was site built.
You learn as you get older in this business, guys, that Tom says, I can guarantee you Tom never says anything. I go, well, we got to look into that. So you always want to try to work that way. So let's see, were there any questions in the chat that I missed? Okay, Valerie, when are we starting? Okay, about 1 minute. Okay. Yes, yes, I do. Anyone willing to share inspectors? Okay, Cynthia, we do have in that referral list, I think that Ted has. Ted, I think we do have recommendations of inspectors. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, we don't officially recommend anybody, but they're just shared by brokers. There's 6 up there now.
See how good he's getting, fam? We don't officially recommend. I love this guy.
Avoid liability, and Ted's got that down, man.
I've been liable too many times.
Okay. So with that said, guys, get those reports. I will share with you guys the annotated one if you email me on that. I'm going to hold back on that inspection report because that was an actual one that I did way back, and that's not fair to the client. But if you need that annotated one, I can certainly send it to you guys.
Yeah, I would have looked at that and said, this is a deal killer. He wants a new roof and he wants a new what? And what the heck?
Yeah, that's Pam on the selling side. Hey, ain't going to give anything to that tree.
No way, no way.
You know, it does fall apart sometimes. And that's like I said. So the romance, as I opened up earlier, the romance of buying that new house or selling that house all changes once you do that inspection. So keep that in mind. That's what separates the boys from the girls and the girls from the boys. All right, guys. See you at 3 o'clock. Take care.
Bye, Tom.
Bye-bye.